Most players spend their biggest nights soaking in the spotlight. Cameras flashing, reporters circling, trophies raised high while the speeches roll on longer than the highlights. When a superstar wins Defensive Player of the Year, the script is usually predictable: celebration first, everything else later. But this time, the story didn't stay centered on the award. It shifted fast, and almost nobody saw it coming. Right after the trophy moment, instead of stretching the media run or leaning into the victory tour, the focus quietly moved backstage. No big announcement, no dramatic setup, just a deliberate move that instantly sparked conversation across football circles and fan communities. Because the attention didn't stay on the honor, it moved to a rookie quarterback many people still weren't sure the league fully believed in yet. The timing made it even more interesting. The gesture happened the same weekend as Shedeur Sanders' birthday. Not a generic shout-out, not a quick social post, something far more intentional: a customized luxury watch, heavy detail, premium build, and engraved with 2 letters and a number that hit like a headline inside any NFL locker room: QB1. That's not casual wording, that's not keep working, that's not future star. QB1 is a declaration, a label, a leadership tag. And when that message comes from one of the most respected veterans in the building, people don't ignore it, they read into it. Fans immediately started connecting dots. Was this symbolic support? A locker room endorsement? A quiet signal about direction? Online discussions exploded with theories. Some reports claimed it was just a birthday flex. Others suggested it was a message about belief and internal alignment. No official statement explained it, which only made the moment louder. And then came the second detail that really turned heads: a copied celebration gesture that longtime watchers instantly recognized. That's when the conversation stopped being about a gift and started being about what might be changing behind the scenes. What made the moment hit harder wasn't just the watch, it was the follow-up gesture that fans immediately recognized. In a short clip that spread quickly online, the veteran defender tapped his wrist, the same signature celebration Shedeur Sanders made popular going back to his college days. That signal has always carried a message: perfect timing, my moment, I'm here now. Seeing an established franchise leader mirror that move wasn't random. In NFL culture, veterans don't casually adopt a rookie's signature. Respect is earned slowly, and imitation is usually the final step, not the first. And this is where the tone shifted from celebration to speculation. Because locker rooms are built on hierarchy, status matters, years matter, production matters. When a top veteran publicly aligns himself with a young quarterback, especially one drafted later than expected, people inside and outside the building start asking questions. Not loud questions, serious ones. Reports from camp coverage and local interviews have consistently described Sanders as upbeat, coachable, and detail-focused. Teammates have mentioned his attitude in meetings, his willingness to ask questions, and his comfort communicating across position groups. None of that guarantees stardom, but in pro locker rooms, those traits travel fast by word of mouth. Respect starts quietly before it ever becomes public. That's why this moment carried weight. It looked less like a birthday surprise and more like a signal of internal belief. Not hype, endorsement. Not projection, confidence. Of course, not everyone agrees on what it means. Some analysts say fans are reading too much into a friendly gesture. Others suggest it reflects growing trust inside the building. And to be clear, no official depth chart decision comes from a gift exchange, but symbolic moments often reveal emotional truths before formal ones appear. And what happened next added even more fuel, because the praise didn't stop at gestures. It moved into direct public comments that pushed the story even further. What really accelerated the conversation wasn't the gift. It was the way the praise started showing up in interviews. When veteran leaders speak carefully, people listen. And when their tone is consistent across multiple media moments, people listen even closer. In several team and media appearances, The franchise defender described the young quarterback as positive, prepared, and genuinely enjoyable to work with. Not generic soundbites, specific personality traits, smiles in meetings, strong attitude in practice, coachable energy. That kind of detail matters because NFL veterans usually keep rookie evaluations vague in public. They avoid putting pressure on young players too early. So when the language gets personal instead of political, it stands out. Now let's frame this correctly. Praise from a teammate does not equal a starting job. It doesn't override coaching decisions, and it doesn't settle depth chart debates. But it does reveal something important: how a player is being received inside the room. And according to multiple reports and interviews, Sanders has been received well. There's also been outside buzz, and this is where we keep it clearly labeled as speculation, that some people inside the fan base believe certain veterans are quietly rooting for the offense to open up more around him. That's fan interpretation, not confirmed team strategy. Still, the fact that the conversation exists shows how fast perception is shifting. Because not long ago, the dominant storyline was draft position and doubt. Now the storyline is presence and preparation. That's a major narrative swing. NFL locker rooms don't move based on social media trends. They move based on daily behavior, how you prepare, how you respond to correction, how you carry yourself when nobody's filming. Veterans notice that before coaches say it publicly. And according to those who have spoken about it, that daily consistency is exactly what's been building trust. But the most interesting part isn't the compliments, it's when they started. Not after a breakout game, not after headlines, before the spotlight even fully arrived. And that timing leads to a bigger question. What are veterans seeing behind closed doors that draft analysts did? Here's something casual fans often miss. Inside an NFL building, draft position loses power fast. Once training camp starts, nobody cares where you were picked. Teammates care whether you can operate, prepare, and respond under pressure. That's it. Front offices draft you, locker rooms accept you. And those are two very different gates to pass through. When a respected veteran backs a young quarterback early, before safe results exist, it sends a strong internal signal. Not hype, risk. Because veterans don't attach their reputation to rookies lightly. Especially not defensive leaders who already carry franchise expectations on their shoulders. That's why this situation caught attention. Instead of the typical "he's developing" or "we'll see" language, the tone around Sanders from certain veterans has sounded more assured. Focus on work ethic. Focus on mindset. Focus on command. Those are quarterback currencies inside team culture, not social media metrics. Now, to keep this responsible and accurate, this does not mean the entire locker room has officially chosen anything. Reports of full team alignment are mostly fan-driven interpretations. What we can say is this: multiple veteran voices have spoken positively and specifically, and that's meaningful at this stage of a young player's career. There's also been online speculation that some coaches were initially more cautious with his reps than certain players preferred. That remains unverified, so it stays in the rumor category. But the fact that this theory is circulating shows how closely people are watching every move around him. Because when a rookie quarterback starts earning veteran respect early, fans read it as momentum. And momentum changes expectations. Veterans evaluate differently than scouts. Scouts project traits. Veterans judge survivability. Can you handle mistakes? Can you reset quickly? Can you take correction without ego? Can you lead without forcing leadership? According to interviews and team coverage, those are the boxes Sanders has been quietly checking. Which explains why the support didn't feel performative. It felt observational. And once observational respect turns into public backing, the pressure shifts. Now it's no longer just a rookie proving he belongs. Now it's a rookie people inside the building are watching closely, for a different reason. And what happened when his real reps finally expanded made that difference even more visible. When the extra reps finally came, the reaction inside the building didn't feel routine, it felt charged. Not because of one throw, not because of one drive, but because of how controlled everything looked. The pace, the decision speed, the body language. Quarterbacks tell you how they feel before the stat sheet ever does. And this is where the conversation started shifting again. Instead of asking whether he belonged, people started asking how quickly he could grow into more responsibility. That's a different level of discussion. One is about permission, the other is about projection. And reports from camp coverage and team media suggested the tempo of the offense looked sharper when he was fully settled into a sequence of snaps. Not perfect, and it's important not to oversell that, but poised. That distinction matters. There's been a lot of online buzz claiming he silenced everyone or proved all doubters wrong overnight. That's fan language, not football language. Development at quarterback is never that instant. But observers did note something consistent. He didn't look sped up. And for young passers, that's usually the hardest hurdle. Teammates respond to tempo more than highlights. When the ball comes out on time, when the huddle sounds confident, when the play call gets echoed with authority, players feel it. Receivers run routes harder. Linemen set with more conviction. Sideline energy lifts a notch. Momentum inside a team rarely starts with fireworks. It starts with steadiness. There's also been speculation online that some early conservative play calling limited what he could show. That remains unconfirmed, so it stays in the fan theory lane, but it's part of the growing conversation. What we do know is that once the leash extended even slightly, the evaluation tone became more curious than skeptical. Curiosity is progress. And here's the part that doesn't show up in highlight packages: how veterans behave between series. Multiple beat writers noted increased sideline interaction, more direct feedback loops, more communication. That's usually a sign a quarterback is being treated as a participant in solutions, not just a passenger in the system. That's a quiet promotion. Because once veterans start talking with you instead of at you, your role is changing. But that raised a bigger question across Brown's discussions and league circles. If the internal respect was building this clearly, why did so many evaluators let him slide so far on draft weekend? That answer goes deeper than one scouting report. Draft night is supposed to be the league's cleanest evaluation moment. Years of film, private workouts, interviews, background checks, analytics. By the time a quarterback's name is called, teams usually feel confident in their projection, even when they're wrong later. But every year there are a few slides that keep getting revisited long after the picks are in. This became one of those cases. When he kept dropping past expected ranges, the live coverage tone changed from analysis to confusion. Commentators started using phrases like "interesting fall" and "teams must see something." That's broadcast code for uncertainty without accusation. No one wants to say the room misread the board, but sometimes that's exactly what happened. There were pre-draft concerns floating around, arm-ceiling debates, system translation questions, mobility comparisons. Some scouts reportedly wondered how quickly his processing would scale against faster pro disguises. Those are normal projection questions for any quarterback. What made this different was the gap between the concerns and the eventual draft position. That gap is what triggered the debate. Because historically, quarterbacks with that level of production profile and leadership responsibility don't last that long unless there are major red flags, and no verified major red flags ever surfaced publicly. Which is why even veteran players later admitted surprise at where he landed. League insiders often say draft rooms don't just evaluate talent, they evaluate risk tolerance. A player with heavy media attention, a famous football lineage, and a built-in spotlight can feel like a higher variance investment to conservative decision makers. That doesn't show up on stat sheets, but it affects draft boards more than fans realize. There's also the reality that quarterback evaluation remains the most missed projection in professional sports. First-rounders fail. Late picks rise. The position refuses to follow neat formulas. Teams know this and still get trapped trying to predict certainty where none exists. What's interesting is how quickly post-draft tone began softening among evaluators once camp reports and early pro reps surfaced. Not dramatic reversals, more like quiet recalibration. You could see it in phrasing, less dismissal, more wait-and-see language. That's usually step one before opinion shifts. And inside Cleveland, the conversation was already moving faster than the national narrative. Because while outside voices debated draft value, inside the building the discussion had moved to something far more practical. Who commands the huddle, who handles pressure, and who players actually rally around. And that's where this story turns from evaluation to alignment. Depth charts are printed by coaches, but quarterback trust is decided by players, and those two things don't always update at the same speed. From the outside, fans track reps, preseason snaps, and coach quotes. Inside a locker room, the indicators are different. Who gets listened to when they speak? Who veterans stand next to during drills? Who teammates look at after a broken play? Those signals never show up in box scores, but they tell you exactly where momentum is moving. Early on, reports described him as steady, upbeat, and unusually composed for a young quarterback walking into a pressure-heavy building. That might sound small, but in pro environments, emotional control is currency. Panic spreads fast. Calm spreads faster. Veterans notice tone before they notice stats. Multiple players described the same pattern prepared in meetings, active with questions, receptive to correction, but not passive. That balance matters. Young quarterbacks who act like they already know everything lose rooms. Young quarterbacks who act afraid to speak never gain one. The middle ground is rare, and when it shows up, teammates lock in. There's also something else players track quietly: response to pressure snaps. Not highlights, recovery. How fast a quarterback resets after a mistake, whether his body language drops, whether the next throw comes out cautious or confident. Teammates read that instantly because their own risk level depends on it. What started happening, according to team-side chatter, was subtle but important. Defensive players started encouraging him mid-series. Linemen were more vocal after protections held. Receivers stayed in conversations between reps instead of drifting back to position groups. Those micro-behaviors are the early signs of offensive gravity forming. No announcement, no headline, just gravity. And here's what makes that powerful. NFL veterans do not emotionally invest in quarterbacks they don't believe can help them win. Careers are too short. Bodies take too much punishment. False hope is rejected quickly inside pro rooms. Which is why the public gestures from respected veterans hit so hard. They weren't marketing moments, they were confirmation moments. Signals that the internal vote was already underway. But that internal alignment created tension too. Because once a locker room starts leaning toward a young quarterback, every conservative coaching decision gets magnified. Every limited rep looks political. Every cautious rollout feels like hesitation instead of development. And when belief inside the building grows faster than opportunity on the field, pressure starts building upward, not outward. That's when organizations face their hardest question. Not is he ready yet, but are we ready to let him be? Every NFL team says they have a development plan, a timeline, a progression chart, but those plans are built in offices and momentum is built on practice fields. When the two fall out of sync, tension shows up fast. That's where this situation quietly turned from a player story into an organizational test. From the coaching side, caution makes sense. Late-round quarterbacks are usually developed slowly. Smaller install packages, limited exposure, reduced early risk. That's standard league behavior, not personal doubt. Coaches protect systems before they promote surprises. But inside competitive locker rooms, patience feels different than it looks on whiteboards. Players don't measure readiness by draft slot. They measure it by command, by repetition, by whether the offense moves when he's in the huddle. And when enough teammates start feeling that shift, waiting begins to feel like wasting. That's when veteran voices matter most. When respected leaders publicly say things like, "The league got that draft slot wrong," or "He shouldn't have fallen that far," they're not arguing with scouts. They're accelerating belief curves. They're telling the room it's safe to invest emotionally now, not later. And that changes behavior. Receivers prepare differently when they believe the quarterback will get real snaps. Linemen communicate protections with more urgency. Defensive starters raise practice intensity because they want the offense battle-tested, not sheltered. Internal competition sharpens instead of coasting. Momentum stops being theoretical, it becomes physical. But here's the pressure point organizations rarely admit. Once player belief reaches critical mass, hesitation becomes visible. And visible hesitation creates narrative risk. Not media narrative, internal narrative. The kind that makes veterans wonder whether performance is truly being rewarded or just managed. That's why leadership timing matters. If you move too early, you risk exposing a quarterback before he's fully ready. Move too late, and you risk losing the room's emotional alignment. There's a narrow window where opportunity and belief must meet, and elite organizations hit that window precisely. What makes this case so compelling is how many signals are converging at once: veteran endorsement, practice reputation, composure reports, leadership body language, and cultural traction, all pointing in the same direction. That usually doesn't happen by accident. And when that many internal signals line up, history shows something predictable follows. The opportunity expands suddenly, not gradually. Because in the NFL, once the room decides, the depth chart eventually catches up. And when it does, the real evaluation begins, not of the quarterback, but of everyone who underestimated how fast belief can build. In the end, this story isn't really about a watch, a celebration gesture, or even a single award night moment. Those were just the visible sparks. The real signal is what they pointed to underneath: alignment, respect, and early belief forming where it matters most. NFL careers aren't decided by headlines. They're decided by who veterans trust when the building is closed and the cameras are gone. What made this moment powerful wasn't the price of the gift or the flash of the engraving. It was who gave it: a franchise cornerstone, a defensive player of the year, a locker room alpha with nothing to gain from empty praise. When someone at that level makes a public show of belief in a young quarterback, people inside the league don't treat it like noise. They treat it like data. And notice the pattern. The praise wasn't about hype throws or viral clips. It centered on attitude, preparation, composure, energy, and consistency. The traits veterans actually care about. The traits that survive bad weather games, hostile crowds, and fourth-quarter pressure. That's why this moment keeps echoing beyond a birthday clip. Because it suggests the evaluation inside the building may already be ahead of the evaluation outside it. While debates rage about draft slots, projections, and comparisons, the people sharing the practice field are forming conclusions based on daily exposure. And daily exposure beats draft reports every time. There's also a bigger shift hiding here. Teams used to wait years before emotionally investing in a young quarterback. Now, when leadership, work ethic, and command show up early, belief moves faster. Veterans don't delay respect just to follow tradition anymore. They respond to what they see. But none of this guarantees a superstar outcome. Belief is not a trophy. It's an opening. What happens next still depends on performance, adjustment, resilience, and growth under real fire. The league will test everything: mechanics, decisions, toughness, leadership under stress. Still, one truth is already locked in. He's not walking that path alone. When the defensive anchor of a franchise plants his flag beside a young quarterback before the results are fully written, that's not marketing, that's foundation. And foundations are what real runs are built on. The award night ended, the clip faded, the headlines moved on. But inside the building, the signal stayed loud, and it's only getting louder.